God Eater sometimes felt like it always struggled to find a direction to go. With the multiple re-releases of the first game, as well as a re-release of the second game, gameplay always seemed to struggle to find where exactly it would go. Sometimes it would want to maintain burst and make that the more interesting mechanic. In other games, it wanted to add an entirely new power-up mechanic that nullified the impacts of burst to a degree. It was really kind of lost. God Eater 3 changes that. The game has finally found a gameplay identity. It has found something to focus on and expand on in order to make its combat more interesting or more unique. The third entry in Bandai's monster hunting game is God Eater 3. It was developed this time not by Studio Shift, who was busy with Code Vein at the time, but instead by Marvelous. Marvelous took the elements of God Eater that they found to be the most unique and amplified them for God Eater 3, while also maintaining the original gameplay feel. Burst has been a mechanic that was fully unique to God Eater. Instead of carving your monster at the end of a fight only, you could also carve your monster mid-fight. These carves would not lead to material gains, but instead to power-ups. The power-up condition in God Eater is called Burst, as I stated before. And if you know this from my previous reviews, then we're going to go over it really quick. Burst is essentially just a simple power-up state with a timer. The timer can be refreshed by devouring and successfully executing the devour, again, on another origami. In previous games, Burst was more of a fragment of combat. You used it, you got the power-up state, and then you just went along with your usual gameplay stuff. You never really worried about it expiring because it didn't offer super substantial buffs. Instead, it was just simply a mechanic that was there, and it would offer pretty good buffs, but nothing that was super noticeable. The approach with God Eater 3 is to make Burst's buffs more noticeable, and they do that by incorporating the blood arts into Burst. Blood arts are from God Eater 2. These are special moves that you can kind of replace your other moves with. Essentially, think of Monster Hunter and Switch skills, if you understand what those are. If you don't, then simply just think, if you had a move and you could replace it with a move that's more effective for fighting your opponent currently, wouldn't you want to do that? And that's what you do in God Eater 3. However, these arts can only be accessed through Burst, again, creating a gateway through God Eater's central unique mechanic. Now, I wouldn't call this exactly revolutionizing the game or anything like that, but it certainly makes it stand out from just being another hack-and-slash anime game. You can have up to 3 burst arts, and each one can replace a different attack. Additionally, for those of you who played God Eater Resurrection and then went to God Eater 2 Rage Burst, as most people probably did outside of Japan, you lost a lot of Devour executions between Resurrection and 2. Putting the reasons for this aside, God Eater 3 brings back Air Devours and Quick Devours. These allow you to maintain Burst a lot easier and make it more of a forefront mechanic rather than a backseat. In most situations, you want to maintain Burst. You'll do anything you can to do that. They also grant you new tools for mobility, like the Shield Dash, as well as some new passive buffs that you can activate by fulfilling certain conditions. All of these add mechanically to the game, without making it seem like they're overloading Burst either. However, at the same time, I feel that in God Eater 3, Burst is your central mechanic that you want to focus on a lot of the time. Focusing the game around Burst is a very smart move. So smart, in fact, that Marvelous decided to also give it to the origami. This doesn't apply to all origami. Old origami remain functionally the same. Some of them got nerfed. That makes me sad, because Diao's Pita was really cool. Anyways, a new type of origami called the Ash origami can execute a Devour attack. If they land this attack, which is unblockable outside of perfect guards, but it can be dodged, on any live enemy, they will enter Burst state. Burst gives them access to brand new moves and brand new attack patterns. Some of them even change their stance. This creates a new challenge for you as a player, because you have to get used to unblockable attacks, as well as some more origami changing their fight patterns in the middle of battle. Now, presentation-wise, the game's visuals are good. I struggle to say that they're great. I think it's a mesh of anime and realism that can be a little jarring. They're much more recent games like Tales of Arise go in more of the direction of being a little bit more stylized rather than just being a clash between anime and realism. Music overall is pretty good. It's nothing I would listen to on my downtime, but it is decent. I'd say for the most part, a lot of the tracks that I do really like from God Eater are from previous games, and most of 3's own unique tracks aren't things that I'm especially into. They're alright. It works for background music, it works for the game. It's not jarring, it's not horrible, so it's fine. Other than that, I guess my only gripe is that a lot of the game utilizes more anime-esque animations, which isn't a bad thing, but for a lot of cutscenes, the English dialogue, the English voices, don't feel like they're totally directed to match, and I couldn't tell you whether that's something that's easily done. It's not horrible voice acting, it just doesn't always match the animation's expression. God Eater 3's approach to character backstory is to utilize character episodes. However, they are different from 2. Character episodes take place solely after the main game has been finished, which means you won't be getting these characters' backstories until really just the end of the game. It also doesn't totally help that they're stuck in this kind of content loop, these missions called Traversing the Past, where you go into the past, you beat these post-origami things that are just there for the sake of giving you something to fight, and then you just get their backstory. It's not a very entertaining content loop, I'll admit. Some of their backstories are interesting and okay and fun to listen to, but I feel like I would resonate with them better if they were presented in a different way, or if they were presented in a way that makes me know these backstories before we really get into the whole story's main ending. Ultimately, I think the characters are a little flat, at least until the Traversing the Past episodes. I think the story overall is still solid, but it still feels a bit weaker than, let's say, Resurrection. I think the post-game plot is actually pretty interesting, at least for world building and character development, and in terms of post-game content, there's a decent amount to be had here, but it's nothing incredibly substantial. There are a lot of challenge missions that require you to go solo an origami or solo several origami, and they can be pretty entertaining because they'll test your knowledge and your ability. You can also finish up your builds, get all your equipment to plus 60. There's a decent amount to do here. So I'm giving God Eater 3 a solid 8 out of 10. Is it the best God Eater game, though? I think gameplay-wise, yes, which should be natural for sequel. Story, on the other hand, is a little more iffy. I'm kind of on the side that I still like Resurrection more, but that might be due to my attachment to the original cast and that original storyline, so maybe you, as a player, would have a different opinion. If you want my honest opinion on whether I would recommend this game to someone, absolutely. However, I do recommend that you play the demo first. The demo can be found on the Nintendo Switch eShop and on the PlayStation Store. There is not one on Steam as far as I know, which is unfortunate, but there's nothing you can really do at this point. Additionally, God Eater 3 can be played on its own. You don't need to play God Eater 1 or 2 to understand the events of 3. It's not completely devoid of callbacks, but they're not like God Eater 1 and 2, where there are a lot of characters from God Eater 1 who appear in God Eater 2. Ultimately, while I do have my gripes with the story, I'm glad we got the full thing, and it feels like it ends off on a note that could lead into another game. It doesn't just end off randomly, like some God Eater games did. If you want to know about those, you can click up here. So thanks for watching. I really appreciate you guys watching these videos. This is the last God Eater review that's going to go up, because there are no more games for me to talk about, so we'll see what comes next. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like. If you want to see more stuff, more anime-related games, more Japanese games, RPGs, all of that, hit the subscribe button. More videos every week from me. And if you have any thoughts about God Eater and God Eater 3 in general, leave them down in the comments. I really love reading through you guys' comments. It's great.